Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Rich Salazar, and I'm one of the Chief Educational Officers here at Neoform Wellness. First, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today as we discuss how Neoform's regenerative therapies may help you significantly reduce the pain you're experiencing and get back to living a more active, enjoyable life. Now, before we get started, I want to make sure we have all our cell phones turned off. I only have you for a very short period of time, and there are people in this room who have come to make very important decisions about the future of their health, and we want minimal distractions as possible. So if you can do that for me right now, I really appreciate that. Now, before we get started, I need to know something. Did anybody actually read the fine print on their invitation? Because if you did, you know that tonight we have a door prize. Now, I have to warn you, I'm about to perform what may be the most sophisticated magic trick ever learned by a first grader. And so here's the deal. If anyone in this room can figure out my magic trick, I will personally invite all of you to Las Vegas, where I live, for a 3-day, 3-night stay at the best resort in Las Vegas, the beautiful Wynn Resort. Now, how does that sound to everyone? Now, to be fair, airfare is not included, and neither is the hotel. But I do need one brave volunteer. Who will that be? Okay? What's your name? Sarah? Nice to meet you, Sarah. Now, just to be clear, we've never met before tonight, correct? Okay, good, perfect. So, here's how this works. There are 4 suits in a deck of cards: clubs, diamonds, hearts, spades. I want you to name any 2 of those 4 suits. Go ahead. Clubs and diamonds? Perfect. We'll eliminate clubs and diamonds, leaving us with hearts and spades. Now, out of hearts and spades, pick one. Spades? Great. We'll go with spades. We'll eliminate hearts and go with spades. Now, within the suit of spades, let's break the cards into 3 groups: ace through 4, 5 through 9, and 10 through king. Now, Sarah, I want you to pick any 2 of those groups: 5 through 9 and 10 through king. Perfect. That leaves ace through 4. Now, from ace, 2, 3, and 4, pick any 2. Ace and 3. Great. Now I want you to choose just one. Ace of spades. Okay. Now I'm going to hand you this deck of cards. You have 30 seconds to find that ace of spades in this deck of cards. Go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, look what I'm holding up right here in my hot little hand. That old ace of spades card that is not in that deck. Okay, now, does anyone know how I did that card trick? The truth is, I cheated, right? Whenever Sarah gave me the answer I wanted, I kept going. If she didn't give me the answer I wanted, I simply changed the rules. Now, why did I do that? Because tonight, I'm going to do something most people never get to see. When you go to a magic show in Las Vegas, the magician never explains how the trick works, right? But tonight, I'm going to take you backstage. I'm going to show you how you got into pain, why you're still in pain, and most importantly, what may help you get out of that pain. And before we're done tonight, you'll realize that this silly little magic trick actually had everything to do with why you're sitting in this room today. Now, before we get started, I want to take a moment to tell you why I'm here. Before joining Neoform, I served as the pastor of 4 different churches. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. What is a pastor doing talking about stem cells? Well, for years, I sat with people who were suffering, people living with chronic pain, people who had lost their mobility, people who had tried everything they knew to try. And more than anything, they were hoping for physical healing. And as a pastor, I wanted to help them. But too often, I didn't have an answer. Then I discovered regenerative medicine. When I saw what stem cell therapy was doing for people who had been told they had no other options, it changed my perspective. And that's why I joined Neoform. Because for the first time, I felt like I could offer people more than just hope. I could offer them a real opportunity to pursue healing, reduce their pain, and reclaim the life they thought they had lost. Now, that's not just my job. For me, it's my mission. So, in order for us to have a productive time together, I'm going to keep today's presentation concise and to the point. But before we go any further, let me ask you a question. How many of you would agree that if there's a chance to reduce your pain, improve your mobility, and potentially avoid surgery or long-term medications, it's worth spending the next 45 minutes to learn about? Wouldn't you agree? And just so I know who I'm speaking to today, how many of you have already tried one or more of the following? Medications, injections, physical therapy, or maybe you've been told that surgery is your only next option. Let me see a show of hands. Then you are exactly who this presentation was designed for. And by the time we finish, one of 2 things will happen. First, you'll decide that today is the day you're ready to take the next step toward reducing your pain, improving your mobility, and getting back to the life you want to live without relying on medications or constant doctor and hospital visits. Or, second, you'll decide that today is just not the right time for you to take that step. Either way, my goal is to give you the information you need to make an educated decision about your health. So, here's what we're going to cover today. First, we'll talk about who we are as a company. Then, we'll define what pain really is, because that's the reason we're all here today, right? Next, we'll discuss some of the challenges with our current healthcare system and why so many people continue to suffer from chronic pain despite years of treatment. We'll discuss what stem cells are, how they work, and why we exclusively use umbilical cord-derived stem cells. And toward the end of my presentation, we'll watch a few interviews from well-known individuals who have experienced life-changing results through stem cell therapy. And then finally, we'll look at how umbilical cord stem cell therapy may help you. And then I'll answer a few questions before we wrap up. Does that sound fair to everyone? Now, when it comes to your health, how many of you believe that experience, discipline, and accountability matter? And that's exactly why I'm showing you this slide. Our lead scientist is Dr. Haven McCall, who works with Johns Hopkins and developed their joint repair protocol. Dr. McCall has 26 years of experience in stem cell therapy, which is why he leads our lab operations. Now, our COO is Floyd McClendon Jr., who is a former Navy SEAL who served for 15 years and completed 5 deployments across 5 continents. So tell me, how many of you would trust a Navy SEAL to oversee a process that requires precision, discipline, and attention to detail? And that's exactly what Floyd brings to Neoform. Mr. McClendon oversees a very tight, thorough, and disciplined process to help ensure quality, consistency, and accountability at every step. Now, who is Neoform? Neoform is a nationwide company comprised of medical professionals, including medical doctors, nurse practitioners, family practitioners, and educational officers. Our processing lab is located directly across the street from the hospital that provides our umbilical cord tissue. And yes, we exclusively use umbilical cord-derived stem cells, which we'll discuss in more detail in just a few minutes. Now, why is being located right across the street from the hospital that provides our stem cells? Why is that important? Well, if you were buying fresh fruit, would you rather buy it the same day it was picked or after it had been shipped around the country for several days? Of course, we all want the freshest product possible, right? Well, the same principle applies to regenerative medicine. In regenerative medicine, timing matters. The faster tissue can be processed after donation, the greater its potential quality and viability. Now, many labs around the country do not have the advantage of being located near a participating hospital. As a result, the tissue has to be frozen, transported, stored, and then processed days later. Our lab's close proximity to the hospital allows for a streamlined process that helps us maintain the highest standards of quality from the very beginning. So, if you had a choice between cells processed the same day or cells that had been shipped, stored, and processed days later, which would you choose? That's right. We would all choose same-day processed cells. And that's exactly why we built our process this way. Now, each month, we educate more than 2,500 people about regenerative medicine. And what we've done is take more than 30 years of regenerative medicine research and thousands of case studies and condense them into a simple, easy to understand presentation just like this one today. Now, how many of you enjoy experiencing white glove service? Maybe it's at a 5-star restaurant. Maybe it's at a luxury hotel. Whatever the case, most of us appreciate great service, right? Well, that same philosophy is at the heart of what we do at Neoform. Today, Neoform is one of the fastest growing medical concierge providers of stem cell therapy in the United States. And one of the biggest differences is our white glove service model. Our patients can be evaluated and treated, watch this, from the comfort of their own homes. Now, how many of you would rather receive medical treatment in your living room recliner than in a doctor's waiting room? Now, some of you may be thinking, Rich, are you telling me I don't have to drive to a hospital or a doctor's office to receive treatment? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Now, in the past, many patients had to travel hours and sometimes even across state lines to access stem cell therapy. But today, our white glove service allows our patients to receive care without the inconvenience of extensive travel or long wait times. We've all had the experience of sitting in a waiting room, shuffling through old copies of National Geographic magazines, hoping our name will be called the next time that nurse opens that side door, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to help people avoid. With Neoform, we offer a more comfortable, convenient experience that allows you to focus on what matters most: your health, your recovery, and your quality of life. So this slide right here shows some of the conditions and areas of the body where we help people find relief from chronic pain. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you are here today because of knee pain? Let me see your hand. How about back pain? Shoulder pain? Hip pain? Neuropathy? Okay, so we have the right people in the room. Now, there are two primary ways we administer treatment. The first is through an IV infusion. With this approach, the stem cells are delivered directly into your bloodstream, allowing them to circulate throughout the body and respond to areas of inflammation and damage. The second method is through targeted joint injections. Now, let me ask you another question. If you had a problem with your knee, would you rather have the treatment go everywhere in your body, or would you want as much of it as possible to stay in your knee? Exactly. That's why we use targeted joint injections, because joints are encapsulated structures, which helps keep a high concentration of cells in the area we're targeting. In fact, approximately 98% of the cells remain in the joint after injection, which allows us to concentrate the regenerative process directly in the damaged area. In other words, we want as many of those cells as possible to stay exactly where they are needed so they can support, repair, and recovery. So the goal is pretty simple. Get the right cells to the right place so your body has the best opportunity to heal, recover, and return to a higher level of function. So this slide shows some of the conditions and areas of the body where we help people find relief from chronic pain. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you are here today because of knee pain? How about back pain? Shoulder pain? Hip pain? Neuropathy? Okay, so I see we have the right people in the room. Now, there are two primary ways we administer treatment. The first is through an IV infusion. With this approach, the stem cells are delivered directly into your bloodstream, allowing them to circulate throughout the body and respond to areas of inflammation and damage. The second method is through targeted joint injections. Now, let me ask you a question. If you had a problem with your knee, would you rather have the treatment go everywhere in your body? Or would you want as much of it as possible to stay in your knee? Exactly. That's why we use targeted joint injections, because joints are encapsulated structures, which helps keep a high concentration of cells in the area we are targeting. In fact, approximately 98% of the cells remain in the joint after injection, which allows us to concentrate the regenerative process directly in the damaged area. In other words, we want as many of those cells as possible to stay exactly where they are needed so they can support repair and recovery. So the goal is pretty simple. Get the right cells to the right place so your body has the best opportunity to heal, recover, and return to a higher level of function. Now, typically, we see a 50 to 75% heal rate, with many patients reporting noticeable improvement in as little as a few weeks. For others, the regenerative process continues over several months and can extend up to a year, depending on the severity of the condition and the body's natural healing process. Now, wouldn't you be thrilled if your pain improved by even 50%? Exactly. Because for many people living with chronic pain, a 50% improvement isn't just a number. It can mean getting back to walking, golfing, playing with grandchildren, traveling, or just simply enjoying life again, right? So now we're going to define pain, but I'm not going to define it. You are. I'm going to go around the room, and I want each of you to give me just one word that describes the pain you live with every day. Let's start with you right here. Throbbing, burning, aching, stabbing, exhausting, okay, debilitating. Now let me ask you another question. If we were able to treat you today and you woke up tomorrow with no pain, give me just one word that describes how that would feel. You'd feel free, okay? Hopeful, happy. Yeah, you'd feel grateful, of course. You'd feel alive, peaceful. So isn't that interesting? In just a few minutes, we went from words like suffering and miserable to words like freedom and joy. So, what is pain? Pain is your body's way of communicating that something needs attention. Now, the amazing thing is that we were all created with a system designed to help us heal. We were all born with stem cells that help our bodies repair, regenerate, and recover from damage. But as we age, the number and activity of those stem cells decline. And when the demand for healing becomes greater than our body's ability to repair itself, we experience what many of you described just a few minutes ago: pain. And that's why regenerative medicine has generated so much excitement, because the question is no longer how do we cover up the pain? The question is, how do we help the body do what it was designed to do in the first place. Our bodies were naturally designed to heal. Now, I asked you earlier about the pain you're experiencing. Some of you said back pain. Others said neck or shoulder pain. Others are feeling some pain in their hands or fingers. Or maybe you have pain in your knees and hips or in your feet. How about this? Does anyone in the room have trouble sleeping? Or maybe you're just not as flexible as you used to be. So that pain we're describing is your body's way of telling you that something is wrong. It's a signal to your brain that something is damaged, inflamed, or not functioning the way it was designed to. And when we experience pain, what's the next thing most of us do? We go see a doctor, right? And there's nothing wrong with that until you find out that your medical condition requires more than one doctor for the same pain. Now, how many of you have been prescribed medications? How many of you have had injections? How many here have been told that surgery may be your only next option? Exactly. Many people find themselves moving from appointment to appointment, test to test, specialist to specialist, and prescription to prescription. And before long, they feel like they've entered a medical house of mirrors, searching for answers, but struggling to find a clear path to lasting relief. Can anyone relate to that? Okay? So the problem isn't necessarily the people in the system. The problem is that much of our healthcare system is designed to manage symptoms rather than address the underlying cause of the pain. And that's why so many people continue to suffer for years, even after trying multiple treatments. Now, if you had the opportunity to address the cause of your pain instead of just covering it up, would you want to learn more about it? I know I certainly would. That's exactly what makes regenerative medicine so exciting, because the question is no longer, how do we mask the pain? The question becomes, how do we help the body repair what's causing the pain in the first place? So now let's take a deeper look at this problem. How many of you, when you first experienced pain, thought to yourself, "Oh, it's not that bad. It'll go away"? Of course, that's what most of us do, right? We ignore it. We tell ourselves it's not that bad. We figure it will just go away on its own. But then the pain doesn't go away. So what do we do next? We try to manage it, right? So let me ask you another question. How many of you have tried pain medications or injections? How about physical therapy, chiropractic care, or how about massage therapy, right? We look for anything that will help us get through the day and convince ourselves that the problem isn't really as bad as it feels. But over time, what happens? The damage often continues to progress. And eventually, many people are told they need a more invasive procedure, a joint replacement, a major surgery, an expensive procedure with a long recovery period. And even then, there are no guarantees, right? And I think it's safe to say that we all know someone who had a surgery that didn't produce the results they were hoping for. So the cycle of appointments, procedures, and treatments begins all over again. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Of course it does. And for many people in this room, that's the journey they've been on for years. And that's exactly why so many of you are here today. You're looking for an option that doesn't just manage the pain. You're looking for a way to address what's causing it. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Big Pharma is a fan of stem cell therapy? Of course not. Why? Because when you run out of a prescription, what do? You buy more. You get a refill. And when you run out again, you buy more, right? Now, does anyone know what this is a picture of? That's right. It's a picture of the United States covered with pills. Now, let me ask you another question. Did you know that the United States represents only about 5% of the world's population? But what percentage of the world's medications do you think we consume? Go ahead and shout out a number. The answer is approximately 85%. Let that sink in for a moment. Does anyone here believe that a country with only 5% of the world's population should be consuming 85% of the world's medications? Of course not. So why do you think that is? Well, follow the money. And by the way, if you owned a company that made billions of dollars every time someone refilled a prescription, would you be excited about a treatment that might reduce the need for those prescriptions? Right, probably not. And that's why I believe Big Pharma has become addicted to the profits generated by pain medications, while millions of people continue to search for real relief. So now, let's talk about the problem with the healthcare system. Does anybody here think Big Pharma is a fan of stem cell therapy? Of course not. Why? Because when you run out of a prescription, what do? You buy more, right? You get a refill. And when you run out again, you buy more. Now, does anyone know what this is a picture of? It's a picture of the United States covered with what? Pills. Did you know that the United States represents only about 5% of the world's population? But what percentage of the world's medications do you think we consume? Go ahead. Shout out a number. The answer is approximately 85%. Now let that sink in for a moment. Does anyone here believe that a country with only 5% of the world's population should be consuming 85% of the world's medications? Of course not. So why do you think that is? Well, follow the money. And by the way, if you owned a company that made billions of dollars every time someone refilled a prescription, would you be excited about a treatment that might reduce the need for those prescriptions? Probably not. And that's why I believe Big Pharma has become addicted to the profits generated by pain medications, while millions of people continue to search for real relief. Now, this chart is staggering. It shows that the United States ranks 47th in the world in life expectancy. Now, here's another question for you. How many of you believe that the United States spends more money on healthcare than any other country in the world? That's right. So if we spend more money than anyone else, where do you think we should rank in life expectancy? Top 10? Top 5? How about number 1? And yet, we rank 47th. Does that make sense to anybody? So why is that? Well, every year, hundreds of thousands of Americans experience serious complications related to medications, and thousands more undergo surgeries that may not have been their only option. And yet, despite all of the medications, procedures, and healthcare spending, chronic pain continues to affect millions of people across this country. So we have to ask an important question. Is the current system incentivized to keep people healthy, or is it incentivized to keep people in the system? And by the way, if the current system was doing a great job of keeping people healthy, do you think all of us would be sitting in this room today looking for an alternative? Absolutely not. So there has to be a better way. And that's exactly why regenerative medicine has gained so much attention over the last several years. Now, how many of you believe the FDA is a completely independent agency that is funded entirely by the government? Well, this article points out that a significant portion of the FDA's drug review budget comes from fees paid by the biopharmaceutical industry itself. Do you think there could ever be a conflict of interest when the industry being regulated helps fund the regulatory process? Now, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just asking the question that more and more Americans are beginning to ask. If we're spending more money on healthcare than any other country in the world, taking more medications than any country in the world, and still suffering from chronic disease and chronic pain at record levels, is it possible that we need to start looking at different approaches? And that's exactly why so many people have become interested in regenerative medicine. How many of you have taken a medication made by Pfizer at some point in your life? Right? Probably most of us. Now, Pfizer has been one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world for well over a century and has yet to cure one single disease. That's pretty staggering to me. Has anyone here ever heard of the Open Payments Database? The Open Payments Database is a public database created by the federal government that tracks payments made by pharmaceutical companies to physicians and healthcare providers. Now, this article reports that doctors in Illinois received more than $74 million in payments from pharmaceutical companies in a single year. So let me ask you a question. Do you think financial relationships between drug companies and healthcare providers could ever create a conflict of interest? Of course it's a conflict of interest. It sounds a little Al Capone-ish to me, actually. Now, I'm not suggesting that all doctors have bad intentions. Far from it. But hear me out. When billions of dollars are being generated from prescriptions and long-term treatments, I think it's fair to ask whether our healthcare system is primarily designed to help people heal or to help people manage their conditions for as long as possible. And for many people, it can feel like they've been moving from appointment to appointment, prescription to prescription, searching for a solution, but never really finding one. And that's one of the reasons so many people today are beginning to look at regenerative medicine as a different approach. So you've heard me mention regenerative medicine a few times today. Now, how many of you would prefer to help your body heal itself rather than just take another pill to manage the pain? Of course you would. Regenerative medicine is the science of helping the body heal itself. So rather than focusing only on managing symptoms, regenerative medicine focuses on supporting the body's natural ability to repair, restore, and regenerate damaged tissues. Regenerative medicine is the process of replacing, repairing, or regenerating human cells, tissues, or organs to help restore normal function. Watch this now. Without the need for surgeries or steroids. So now the question changes, right? We stop asking, how do we cover up the pain? And we start asking, how do we help the body repair what's causing the pain? And that's where Neoform comes in. We specialize in regenerative medicine, helping patients reduce pain, improve mobility, and improve their quality of life through advanced stem cell therapy. So, if your body already has the ability to heal, what if the real question isn't whether healing is possible, but whether your body still has the tools it needs to do it? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Now, how many of you have ever thought that stem cell therapy sounds a little too good to be true? It's a fair question, right? Because when you hear about the body repairing itself, it can sound a bit like the Matrix movie series. Sounds a little science fiction, right? But this isn't science fiction or something being experimented with in somebody's garage. This article right here highlights the work being done at the Cedars-Sinai Regenerative Medicine Institute, one of the leading medical research institutions in the world. They're investing millions of dollars into stem cell research to better understand how the body can repair and regenerate damaged tissues. So, if some of the most respected physicians, scientists, and medical institutions in the world are investing billions of dollars and decades of research into regenerative medicine, do you think they believe there's something here worth paying attention to? Well, I think the answer is pretty clear. Of course this is worth paying attention to, and they know it, and are putting their money where it matters most. And what we're going to see over the next few slides is that this science isn't coming, it's already here. How many of you have heard of the Cleveland Clinic? Most people have, right? It's consistently ranked as one of the top hospitals and research institutions in the world. And right here on their website, they describe stem cell therapy as a way of helping the body heal itself. Now, why is this important? Because it reinforces the central idea of regenerative medicine. The goal isn't to simply mask the symptoms or cover up the pain. The goal is to help the body repair what has been damaged so it can function the way it was designed to function. Okay, now here is where things start to get really interesting. How many of you believe that scientists have successfully grown a full-sized beating human heart using stem cells. Be honest. Now, how many of you think I'm making this up? Well, I'm not. This article highlights a breakthrough that would have sounded like science fiction just a few years ago. Scientists successfully grew a full-sized beating human heart using stem cells. Let that sink in for a moment. A beating human heart. Now, why is that important? Because it demonstrates the incredible potential of stem cells and their ability to develop into specialized tissues within the human body. Now, I'm not saying we're growing new hearts for patients here at Neoform, but what I am saying is that this research gives us a glimpse into the extraordinary healing and regenerative capabilities that stem cells possess. And if stem cells have that kind of potential, is it really that hard to believe they may help the body repair damaged joints, cartilage, tendons, and other tissues? That's why regenerative medicine is one of the most exciting fields in healthcare today. Now, earlier, I asked how many of you in this room are dealing with joint pain, knees, hips, shoulders, back pain. So this slide right here is for you. Here we have another example from one of the most respected medical institutions in the world, Johns Hopkins Medicine. And as you can see, their researchers have been studying how stem cells can help repair damaged joints and cartilage. And in fact, this article discusses the potential of stem cells to form new cartilage and other tissues that may help replace or repair damaged areas of the body. Now, why is that important? Because joint damage is one of the leading causes of chronic pain, reduced mobility, and loss of quality of life. So, if you had the choice between repairing a joint and replacing a joint, which one would you choose? Exactly. You would choose to repair. And that's why some of the brightest minds in medicine are investing their time, energy, and resources into stem cell research for joint repair. Because it tells us something very important. The future of medicine isn't just about managing symptoms. It's about helping the body repair, restore, and regenerate itself. So now, what exactly are stem cells? Well, stem cells are the body's repair system. When you're injured, your body naturally sends stem cells to the damaged area to help repair and replace injured tissue. Simple enough, right? Now, how many of you, before coming here today, thought stem cells came from embryos? Let me see your hands. That's a very common misconception. At Neoform, we do not use embryos. We use umbilical cord derived stem cells that come from healthy live births where the umbilical cord would otherwise be discarded. Now, every donation is voluntary and goes through an extensive screening process. In fact, both the mother and the umbilical cord are tested multiple times for infectious diseases, sterility, and other safety standards. Now, let me repeat that again. Both the mother and the umbilical cord are tested multiple times for infectious diseases, sterility, and other safety standards. And only a small percentage of donations meet the high standards we require for use. So, if you needed a cell to help repair your body, Would you rather use a cell that's 20, 30, or 40 years old, or a cell that's only a few minutes old? Exactly. And let me add another important point. Another advantage is that these cells are undifferentiated. So, Rich, what does that mean? In simple terms, they haven't been assigned a specific job yet. That allows them to respond to signals from damaged or inflamed areas of the body. And because of our unique processing model, our patients receive day zero cells, helping us maintain the highest standards of quality possible. So if you had a choice between using older aged cells or young, highly viable cells that have been thoroughly screened and tested, which would you choose? And that's exactly why we use umbilical cord derived stem cells. Now, how many of you have been told that inflammation is the source of your pain? Let me see your hands. Okay? And that's important because one of the primary things stem cells help with is reducing inflammation. And as many of you know, inflammation is one of the biggest contributors to chronic pain. Now, if you could reduce the inflammation in your body, do you think there's a good chance you would also reduce your pain? Of course. But that's just the beginning. The second thing stem cells help with is modulating the immune system. So in other words, they help regulate and balance the body's natural healing response. Third, they help stimulate regeneration. They release powerful signals that encourage the body's own repair mechanisms to go to work. And fourth, they may help reduce scar tissue while supporting the development of healthier tissue. So let me ask you one more question. When you cut your finger, do you have to tell your body how to heal it? Of course not. Your body already knows how to heal. So the question is, as we get older, do we still have enough of the right tools to support that healing process? And that's why when people ask me what stem cells do, my simple answer is this. They help create an environment where the body can do what it was designed to do in the first place, heal. Now, how many of you here have been told that inflammation is the source of your pain? And that's important because one of the primary things stem cells help with is reducing inflammation. And as many of you know, inflammation is one of the biggest contributors to chronic pain. Now, if you could reduce the inflammation in your body, do you think there's a good chance you would also reduce your pain? Of course. That's just the beginning. The second thing stem cells help with is modulating the immune system. In other words, they help regulate and balance the body's natural healing response. Third, they help stimulate regeneration. They release powerful signals that encourage the body's own repair mechanisms to go to work. And fourth, stem cells help reduce scar tissue while supporting the development of healthier tissue. So when you cut your finger, do you have to tell your body how to heal it? Of course not. Your body already knows how to heal. So the question is, as we get older, do we still have enough of the right tools to support that healing process? And that's why when people ask me what stem cells do, my simple answer is they help create an environment where the body can do what it was designed to do in the first place, heal. Now, does anyone in the room know how old your stem cells are? The answer is simple. They're the same age you are. So if you're 30 years old, your stem cells are 30 years old. If you're 70 years old, your stem cells are 70 years old. And just like every other part of the body, stem cells age over time. They become less active, less abundant, and less effective at repairing damage. In fact, research shows that our natural stem cell population begins to decline significantly as we age, particularly after the age of 50. So, if your body has fewer repair cells available, what do you think happens? Healing slows down, right? Recovery takes longer. Inflammation lasts longer, and pain becomes more common. And that's one of the reasons why many people feel great in their 20s, but start experiencing chronic aches, pains, and joint problems later in life. Now, this chart helps us visualize what happens to our stem cell population as we age. Look at the difference between a newborn and someone over the age of 60. The decline is dramatic, right? So at birth, the body is filled with young, active stem cells that are constantly supporting growth, repair, and development. But with each decade of life, those numbers continue to drop. And by the time many people reach their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they have only a fraction of the stem cells they once had. So when someone tells me, Rich, I don't heal like I used to, my response is, of course you don't. Your body doesn't have the same number of repair cells available that it had 20, 30, or even 40 years ago. And that's a major reason why recovery becomes more difficult as we get older. Now, again, here's where things get really interesting. Not only do we have fewer stem cells as we age, the stem cells we do have don't multiply as quickly either. Take a look at this chart. Fetal stem cells replicate at an incredibly fast rate. And as you can see, in just 30 days, they can multiply into billions of cells. Adult stem cells are much slower, and aged stem cells are even slower. So we have a double challenge as we get older. Number one, we have fewer stem cells available. And number two, the stem cells we have left don't reproduce as efficiently. That's why recovery from injuries takes longer. That's why surgeries take longer to heal. That's why joint pain and degenerative conditions become more common with age. And that's also why so many people are excited about the potential of young, highly active umbilical cord-derived stem cells. They provide the body with cells that haven't experienced decades of aging, stress, and wear and tear.
The umbilical cord's cut, baby's taken away, and then some short time thereafter, mother delivers the afterbirth, which includes the placenta and the umbilical cord and the amnion, and all of that tissue is rich in cells, and these cells are basically biologic garbage, and they're thrown away. So what we do is we take that tissue. You've reset the clock. These are day zero cells from a baby that was just born. They have a high degree of ability to reproduce and to secrete the three major things that we know that they do in the body. They secrete a batch of molecules that stimulate regeneration, that decrease inflammation, and modulate the immune system. So their main job in the body is to maintain the status quo. So when you're sick, you're not maintaining the status quo. When you're 70, you're not maintaining the status quo. Look at yourself, look at a picture of you 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You haven't maintained the status quo. Things are going south. And so these cells, their job is to maintain the status quo, and that's why I think they're so important for aging research and for chronic illness.
What stem cells do can seem little short of miraculous.
What I do myself and what I think is going to be ultimately the answer for a lot of age-related decline and age-related chronic diseases is taking young, healthy stem cells for example, from umbilical cord, and using those to supplement what you have. Because not only do they do the job of the stem cells that you used to have, but they also stimulate what you have left to behave younger. So they are the reason you renew yourself. And one question I get quite often is, how can these stem cells treat so many conditions? And the simple answer to that is the root cause of most of those conditions is lack of stem cells. Either lack of stem cells or the ones you have left aren't working properly. So if the common cause is that, then it would make sense that the treatment of choice would be replacement of those stem cells with ones that are healthy and ones that are active.
There are two main kinds of stem cells. Neil uses mesenchymal stem cells, MSCs.
These MSCs are found throughout your body, so you can get them from the fat, you can get them from the bone marrow. Every organ has MSCs in it. If you have a tooth taken out, you can take MSCs from that. But the problem with those MSCs is that they're as old as you are. And a lot of our patients are advanced age. If you're young and healthy, your MSCs are in great shape, right? But the sicker somebody is and the older they are, they have what we would consider an MSC exhaustion condition. So the young cells, when they're in contact with the old MSCs, they actually reprogram the old MSCs to act more like young MSCs. So their turnover time is quicker. So just to give you an example, if you take MSCs from a newborn, they'll divide about every 24 hours. So you start with one cell and you let them divide in the laboratory for 30 days, you'll have 1 billion cells. So you take the same cell from a 35-year-old and it divides around every 48 hours, right? And that sounds linear, from 24 to 48, but at the end of a month you have 32,000 cells instead of 1 billion. And if you take from a 65-year-old, the average doubling time is 60 hours. And you do the math on that, at the end of the month you have 200 cells. Well, if the repair that's requires 1,000 cells or 5,000 cells or 10,000 cells, you're always going to lose, right? If you're in that condition. So that's why at later ages, people have such a dramatic response, is because they're always deficient on the repair side. And these cells help their cells behave younger and basically do more repair.
Now, before we go any further, I want you to hear directly from one of the leading experts in this field as he explains where umbilical cord tissue comes from and why it has become such an important part of regenerative medicine. Take a look. Now, this right here is an X-ray image of Janice's knee just 104 days after treatment. And as you can see, there are visible changes in the joint space that suggest the body has begun its natural repair and regeneration process. Now, this right here is an X-ray image of Janice's knee just 104 days after stem cell treatment. And as you can see, there are visible changes in the joint space that suggest the body has begun its natural repair and regeneration process. Now, this MRI shows Catherine's lower back before treatment and 24 months later. After previously failing surgery and epidural injections, she experienced significant relief of her nerve pain, along with visible changes in the L5-S1 disc area, as you can see here, as a result of stem cell therapy. Now, so far, we've talked about how stem cells can help with pain and tissue repair. But what many people don't realize is that the benefit of regenerative therapy often extend far beyond the area being treated, to include peripheral benefits. This study shows blood vessels before treatment And again, 6 months after stem cell therapy, demonstrating what? Increased blood flow and the development of new vascular pathways that help improve circulation to damaged tissue. Now, this study shows a patient with neuropathy before treatment, and again, just 14 weeks after stem cell therapy. And as you can see, the images show improved blood flow and circulation in the feet, which may help explain why many of our patients report reduced numbness, tingling, burning, and discomfort associated with neuropathy. Now, these CAT scans show a patient with pulmonary fibrosis before and after stem cell IV therapy. Notice the extensive scar tissue visible in the image on the left compared to the image on the right, which shows a significant reduction in the fibrotic changes and improved lung appearance following stem cell treatment. Now, if you think stem cells are only about knees, shoulders, and joints, think again. This article features a paralyzed patient who regained upper body movement following stem cell treatment. And it's examples like this that show why so many scientists believe we are only beginning to understand the true potential of regenerative medicine. So now I want to share with you a couple of short video testimonials from some people who have experienced life-changing results from stem cell therapy.
Speaking of hands, I have not played in this concert hall any solos in 10 years. And there's a reason for that, because I've been suffering with osteoarthritis in my thumbs. And in September, I had stem cell regenerative therapy done in my thumbs, and I can play again. So it's like a modern medical miracle. And so think about that yourselves. If you're planning to get a knee replacement or a hip replacement, stem cell therapy can grow back the cartilage, and it's grown it back in my hands. I could never have played this 6 months ago. I couldn't have done this. And so it's like opened a whole new world for me, and I'm really thrilled to be able to play powerful solo pieces again. So what better way to try out my new thumbs than play Liszt etudes? So here are the 3 concert etudes by Franz Liszt.
It protects babies in the womb, and now there's a new use for amniotic fluid.
Yeah, doctors at Midwest Orthopedic at Rush are using that to alleviate knee pain in patients with osteoarthritis. NBC5's Lauren Petty shows us how it works.
Watching 76-year-old Marty Siselzik balance on one leg, it's hard to believe he used to suffer from debilitating knee pain.
I couldn't even put a sock on. I couldn't put my pants on. I couldn't walk upstairs.
The retired firefighter loved to ski and run until he was diagnosed with osteoarthritis in his right knee.
Once that thing blew up on me, it was devastating because that's what I really like to do was run.
So the whole kneecap has shifted over a little bit. Any pain or anything I'm doing?
No.
Marty went to see Dr. Adam Yankee at Midwest Orthopedics at Rush, who suggested Marty participate in a study involving an injection of amniotic fluid.
And it comes from healthy elective C-sections, and so this comes from mothers that are willing to donate this tissue.
Just as the amniotic fluid and membrane protect a baby in utero,
Same idea that you would want to have that happen in the joint.
I didn't care what it was. It could have been Campbell's soup. If my knee was going to feel better, that's what I wanted.
after one shot, Marty was back running again, even giving Dr. Yankee the first place medal he won in a 5K race.
So far, Midwest Orthopedics has used the shot to treat knee pain, but that could expand to other joints in the future.
And there's actually a trial that's starting for hip arthritis as well.
It's been 3 years since Marty's shot.
Been golfing, skiing, and back to just doing normal stuff.
even running 3 to 4 miles a couple of days a week.
That injection helped me. I don't know if it'll help everybody, but it certainly helped me.
At Midwest Orthopedics at Rush, Lauren Petty, NBC5 News.
Yeah, that could
Wow,
help
he
a lot
looks
of
great.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
Good to see.
Tony Robbins. He's a leading life and business strategist, best-selling author of some of the most popular self-help books. His latest book is called Life Force: How New Breakthroughs in Precision Medicine Can Transform the Quality of Your Life and Those You Love. It covers everything from sleep to aging to Alzheimer's. Tony Robbins joins us this morning from Palm Beach, Florida. Tony, nice to see you.
Nice to see you again, Rosanna. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm wondering what prompted you to write this book, Life Force?
What really triggered me, I've always been involved in this, was I had an accident that they told me was going to end my career. I was chasing a 22-year-old down the side of a mountain, and he was doing things I didn't know how to do on a snowboard. And at the end of it, I thought I broke my neck. It was so bad. But they tore all my rotator cuffs severely. I was in like a 9/9 pain, not able to sleep. And I went to all these doctors, and it was surgery, surgery, surgery. And I said, well, what's the recovery? Well, you may not be able to lift your arm above your shoulder. It might take 4 to 6 months. And, I'm with groups of 20,000 people at a time. I can't do it with one arm. And then one doctor pulled me aside and he said, listen, I think you're an incredible person, but I just got to shoot you straight. And he showed me my spine. And I've had spinal stenosis for a long time, a lot of pain. And he said, your life as you know it is over. No more jumping, no more snowboarding, no more anything you're doing. He said, you just can't do it. He said, you might not be able to walk with one good hit. And it was like a gut punch. And I was like, okay, I just can't give up on this. My whole life has been finding answers. So I went to Dr. Peter Diamandis, who's a good friend and partner of mine. He's a co-author now of the book. And he knows everybody in the industry. And I said, I've heard about stem cells. I know some, I've heard bad things about, some great. I know the FDA has approved it for 80 diseases. 1 million people have had them. But where would be the best place to go? And he said, you got to meet Dr. Bob Harari, who's now my partner and also co-author in this book. He was one of the first people to discover stem cells. And so I sat down with him. He said, Tony, the ones you need for something this strong, you need 4-day-old stem cells. I said, I don't want fetal tissue. He goes, no, it's cords. People throw away the cord and placenta during birth. And he said, it has the most powerful stem cells. He told me where to go. I did 3 days where I just did an IV and a shot. The first day, I was just relaxed. The second day, I woke up, and not only was my shoulder perfect, but I stood up with no pain in my spine for the first time in 14 years. And I got the MRI, my shoulder's perfect. So it's like I became obsessed. And I found it wasn't just stem cells. There is a regeneration revolution. Precision medicine is coming about right now with technology.
But
that if you just look at certain things, you miss out on what's available.
I know, Tony, why aren't, like when you go to the doctors, like your regular doctors that you go to, why aren't they talking about this precision medicine? Like stem cells, for example, I was very curious about because friends of mine are going to Costa Rica to get them. I don't know anything about it.
Well, if you use your own stem cells and you're over the age of 35 or 40, they drop off the cliff. So those are called autologous. If you do allogenic, which is a big word, it just means from someone else, you can get those stem cells that are 4 days old and they have the force of life. It's what makes a baby be able to grow so quickly. And so what I can tell you is there's so many breakthroughs. Like literally you can heal in days instead of weeks or months. Jack Nicklaus, who's one of the greatest golfers of all time, endorsed my book because I met him at the Vatican. I went to the Vatican. Believe it or not, the Pope every 2 years brings in all the best doctors in the world. That's how far stem cells have come.
Wow.
And while I was there, I was the cleanup speaker. Well, I attended every class and I met Jack there. And Jack was supposed to have spinal fusion, which only works about 50% of the time and it limits your ability to move. And he did stem cells instead. And now he's 82 years old. He couldn't stand for 10 minutes without pain. Now he plays golf and tennis at 82.
Tony, are there risks? Are there risks to this?
The FDA has approved stem cells for over 80 different diseases, and they're the most rigorous in the world. My risk for the surgery was much greater than it was for the stem cells, and I got the result in a few days instead of 4 to 6 months of rehab and perhaps breaking it down again.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of stem cells shot into my shoulder that healed it up. But I had some pretty significant shoulder injuries.
Yeah. You did the labor room surgery, rotator cuff, nothing?
No surgery. But I had a full-length rotator cuff tear.
Oh, okay.
And they used exosomes, and it was gone. The next MRI I had, the tear was gone.
Yeah.
Just, it goes, It just seals up. And I went through the rehab, and then I got another MRI like 6 months later, 8 months later, whatever it was. When it started feeling good, they said, well, let's take a look at it. And they were like, holy. Like Dr. Roddy McGee from Vegas, who does a lot of the UFC stuff, he goes, do you know how crazy that is? He's like, your tear is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. There's new stuff now called Wharton's jelly that is even more powerful than any of the previous stem cell ones. And I had that shot into my shoulder too.
And that's all in the States?
All in the States, yeah. The stuff in the States now is way more potent than it was just 5 years ago.
Okay. Because I heard
way more. They do IV stem cells too.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So what exactly does it help? Does it help with like
regenerate soft tissue?
So like, would that be like a tendon, a ligament?
Tendons, ligaments, muscle injuries, things along those lines. They can regenerate ligaments, regenerate tissue, tears.
There you see
stuff
Manning
where
shaken up,
you ordinarily would have to get things sewn up.
Manning has had 4 medical procedures in just 19 months, rendering his neck almost bionic.
That the Indianapolis Colts will release quarterback Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning was cut by the Colts because of concern about his health. The wait is over. Peyton Manning has made his decision. He will continue his career this upcoming season with the Denver Broncos.
So right about now, you're probably saying to yourself, Rich, this all sounds great, but I probably can't afford it. Well, the good news is we've worked very hard to make this therapy as affordable as possible. One of the reasons we're able to keep our costs lower than many traditional providers is because we've built a different business model. We don't maintain expensive brick and mortar clinics in every state we serve, which significantly reduces overhead. Okay? We negotiate fixed costs with our medical providers and nursing teams. We also maintain lean marketing expenses. And more importantly, we leverage our nationwide volume purchasing relationships with our laboratories. So, our group pricing model allows us to pass many of those savings directly to you. So our goal has always been simple, to make regenerative medicine as accessible and affordable as possible for the people who need it most. Now let me ask you a question. If this treatment could help you get your life back, what would that be worth to you? Most would do whatever it takes to experience that kind of life again, right? So before I show you the numbers, I'd like everyone to take a guess at what you think a treatment like this costs. So the cost of treatment is patient-specific and depends on a number of factors, including the areas of the body we're treating, the severity of the condition, and the type of treatment plan that's recommended. Now, having said that, 95% of our patients invest between $6,000 and $18,000 in their treatment program. Okay? Now, how many of you have already spent thousands of dollars on doctors, MRIs, medications, physical therapy, injections, or procedures that didn't give you the results you were hoping for? Okay? And that's why we work very hard to make this as accessible as possible. We do offer financing options as well. And we also have a variety of discount programs for military personnel, teachers, government employees, first responders, union members, and several other groups. So the question isn't necessarily, can I afford to do this? I think the better question might be, what is it costing me to continue living with the pain I'm already experiencing, right? Now, one of the most common questions we receive is, how many treatments will I need? And the good news is that for many patients, the answer is fewer than they expect. So, for conditions such as joint degeneration, arthritis, and chronic inflammation, our treatment protocol typically involves a single treatment. Now, for more complex or systemic conditions, some patients may benefit from a second treatment depending on their individual health status and treatment goals. Now, it's important to understand that our objective is not to create a lifelong treatment plan. Our goal is simply to deliver the therapy necessary to support the body's natural healing process and then allow that regenerative process to continue over time. In other words, we're not trying to manage your condition forever. We're just trying to help your body recover, repair, and function better with as few treatments as possible. Make sense? So now the big question becomes, what happens if you're interested in learning whether this therapy could be a good fit for you? Well, the next step is a simple pre-screening consultation with me, right in the comfort of your own home as soon as tomorrow. Now, normally, this consultation carries a fee of $299, but as a thank you for attending today, I'm waiving that fee for everyone here. Now, the consultation itself is quick and straightforward. It takes about 15 minutes for an individual or about 30 minutes for a couple. And during our time together, we'll discuss your health history, discuss your specific condition, answer any questions you may have, and then determine whether you may be a candidate for treatment. Oh, and I want to emphasize this. There is absolutely no obligation. If you decide this isn't the right fit for you, that's perfectly okay. But if you do decide to move forward, attending today also allows you to take advantage of our group pricing, which can significantly reduce the cost of treatment. So rather than asking you to make a decision today, we're simply asking you to take the next step, which is to fill out a short survey that I'll be handing out in just a second. Now, let's talk about the last step before we go home. As we've discussed, one of the things that makes Neoform different is what? Our white glove in-home service model. That means we come to you. Tomorrow, I'll be meeting with individuals and couples in their homes to conduct your complimentary pre-screening consultation. If you are a candidate, we'll explain exactly what your personalized treatment protocol may look like, how many cell treatments may be recommended, what the expected timeline could be, and what you can realistically expect moving forward. And at that time, you'll also receive exact pricing information specific to your treatment plan so you can decide whether this is the right path for you. My job is simply to provide information, answer questions, and help guide you through the process. Okay? So here's what I need you to do right now. I'm going to pass out this survey form to everyone. The form is very straightforward, and I ask that you please complete every section. At the bottom of the form, you'll see a shaded box with appointment times ranging from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please circle every time tomorrow that you would be available for a home consultation. So, if you're available all day, circle as many times as possible. If you're only available during one specific time, simply circle that time. The more availability you provide, the easier it will be for me to schedule everyone efficiently. Now, if your home is difficult to locate or if there are any special instructions I should know about, please write those in the special instructions section. Got it? Here is something else that I need everyone to pay attention to. Part of the screening process includes reviewing your current medications. So, to help make the best use of our time together, please have either your medications laid out and available when I arrive, or a written list of everything you're currently taking. I will have a full sign-up schedule tomorrow, so having that information ready will help us stay on time and ensure you get the most value from our visit. Okay? That's very important to have ready for me. Also, I want everyone to know that I will never arrive unannounced. So, once I receive your completed survey, tomorrow I will text you approximately 20 minutes before your scheduled appointment to let you know I'm on my way. Okay? And finally, as an additional thank you for attending today, if you decide to move forward with treatment after your consultation, we'll apply an additional $50 discount toward your treatment program. So, I'll be standing right outside the door to collect your completed surveys. Thank you all for being here today. I truly appreciate your time, and I look forward to meeting many of you tomorrow.